Elections have been set in Cameroon for Sunday, the 12th of October 2025. Now, that's just in about 3 months. Hardly enough time for the opposition parties in Cameroon to prepare themselves to face the ruling party, that is the CPDM of the current incumbent president, Paul Bartholomew Biya. Now, why am I saying that the time is not enough? Because if you really look at the elections in Cameroon, from what I'm getting from Mimi Mefo Info, there are about 8 presidential candidates, that would mean about 7 of them representing the opposition, who have come forward to present their political parties and we know are ready to contest in the upcoming elections. As well behind that, shockingly, a report also indicated that there are about 30 other candidates in the opposition who have declared their intention to also in the next 3 months present their candidature. And I'll be very honest, all this does is fragment the population which is needed to actually overtake the CPDM in the elections. I want to really get into some details. It's going to require us to reflect on some statistics from the past election, because in the past election, we noted that only about 6,667,754 people were registered to vote, and about 3.59 million ballots were actually cast. This is in a population of that time, which was surely about maybe 25 million. Now, with the current statistics from Elecam, they're telling us that about 8,055,622 people have been registered to vote in this year's 2025 upcoming presidential election. Now, this is very interesting because when you want to look at these details, CPDM won 71.28% of the 2018 presidential election. That's about 2,521,934 votes. Now, what this literally points to us is that of the 6 million people that registered in 2018, only about 53.85% of them actually came out to vote. That would have been about 3.59 million ballots cast. And in the 3.59 million ballots cast, 2,521,934 of them, 71.28% of the actual ballots cast in 2018, went to the ruling party. Of course, we remember the president of the CRM, that is the Cameroon Renaissance Movement, Maurice Kamto, presented about 18 petitions which were thrown out by the Supreme Court. But in that last 2018 election, the CRM of Maurice Kamto was only able to win about 14.23% of the ballots. That's only 503,384 votes. Now, this is just a fifth of the population that allegedly voted for the CPDM. I'm going to say allegedly because we do note there's always voter irregularities. It's a system that's always been perpetuated by control of divisional officers over the vote counting in the end, things of that nature. I don't want to digress. I want us to focus on the fact that if only 500,000 people voted for the second opposition party that ran up in the 2018 election, and then coming after, we had, because SDF was actually suppressed, because the fighting between Amazonia fighters in the military in the northwest and the southwest region, we saw instead the emergence of Cabral Libii. He is the head of the CPNR, or the PCRN, that is the Cameroon Party for National Reconciliation. And in the 2018 election, he came up with 6.28% of the votes. That's only about 221,995 people. 6.28% votes went to the third place runner-up of 3.59 million ballots cast out of about 6,660-something thousand registered voters in 2018. Then following behind him came the SDF with 3.35%. That's the Social Democratic Front led by Joshua Osih. Of course, we know the national chairman of the SDF, Honorable Nijon Frundi, has gone into transition. And of course, we do give him his proper respects for the work that he did in trying to lead the opposition movements in Cameroon towards experiencing greater democratization. Though we do have to always acknowledge that the greatest mistake Nijon Frundi made with the SDF was allowing the CPDM in the early 90s at the parliamentary election, in which he had the SDF boycott the National Assembly, that is the parliamentary elections, allowing the CPDM to get the majority that it has had today with, over 150-something seats in the parliament, dominated since then by the ruling party, which has allowed President Paul Biya to increase the presidential terms plus the frequency of the presidential terms to be as often as he can claim that he has what he calls le choix de people. That is the people's choice, essentially. And I mean, when a gentleman is capable of manifesting 71% of the electoral ballot, you would think that he actually does have the people's choice with him. But this is the point, fam. This is a country that in 2018 had maybe about, let's say, 25 million people. By current statistics, they're actually stating that Cameroon has about 8,055,622 registered voters for the 2025 election period, with world statistics telling us that there's about 29 million people in Cameroon right now. So if you're saying that you can only register about 8 million people out of 29 million people, this is less than a quorum in any association. When we talk of any quorum of populations, we should be talking of anywhere from 49 to 51% at least. And in a population of 29 people, this means that we should be talking of at least 15 or 16 million people registered to vote, but we don't even have up to that. So automatically, from my perspective, the elections in Cameroon are not legitimate because it doesn't represent the population. But they're going to say the population that does come out to actually vote is representative of the people. And you still see the CPDM now, even with 6 million people registering, they're only able to get about 53.85% of the population that registered in the 2018 election actually came out. Now, these statistics are very critical to understand, fam, because what we are realizing is that if we have 8 parties registered for the 2025 October election, and they are only capable of fragmenting at the highest 14% with the leading party, and then you see even third place was 3.35%, fourth place was Akere Muna. He only pulled in 0.35% of the registered vote. That's 4. So we're saying that from 500,000 today as the opposition didn't actually gain more than 1 million votes in the top 8 political parties that went forward to contest against the election. So what keeps happening in Cameroon is not that the CPDM is a powerful political party or that Biya is such a great political maverick that he has understood how to dominate opposition parties in Cameroon. If he's learned to dominate opposition parties in Cameroon, it's through allowing that the law from 1990 on political parties allows anyone to freely register a political party in Cameroon. From what I'm told, there's over 200 registered political parties in Cameroon, all of them in one way, dividing the ballot according ethnic lines, business lines, lines in which there's a lot of what's in it for me-ism is what I'm going to say. And because of this now, the political parties fragment themselves to an extent that when election times start to approach, you hear a little talk here and there about opposition coalition and parties coming together to challenge the ruling party, but they never do it because the opposition heads themselves have serious egos about who's going to go in to be the president overall if they won, and how would they then come behind to actually divide the ministries amongst themselves. If they actually had a common objective to take over the presidency, they would have concretized in these backdoor meetings that should be going on well in advance of the presidential election. Now, in the next 3 months, if we saw the opposition parties in Cameroon coming together with such a united front to go and contest the presidency, then we would know that there has been some difference or change in the dynamics. But instead, we've seen people like Bello Buba, the UNDP, and Issa Chiromo, who had parties that actually operated like satellites to the CPDM. They would come out and gain their own less than 10% of the electoral registry, but then they would always advise their party militants to support the ruling party. In this 2025 election, they've come out and told their party militants not to support the ruling party in the end. So what we're seeing is that maybe there's a little bit of retraction. But with this retraction still and the fragmentation of the political parties, all they're going to demonstrate still is that maybe in their political party, in their ethnic region of the country, they're able to manifest a certain population behind them, which then makes the ruling party and government administration acknowledge that there are certain barons in areas that need to be well kept. So they cater them contracts, and their party militants receive certain benefits and an integration in the system, which is not them being in the ruling party. But of course, like the former Prime Minister Chidi Achu some years back explained, the definition of politics in Cameroon is you scratch my back, I scratched yours. So a very deplorable definition of politics, which should be more about policy making for the individuals through representatives. But we know how the system has been working out. So that is the situation, fam. I mean, we've got some new people coming out like Eric Somotiti and his We Are the Change party in Cameroon, but I'll be honest, I'm not being pessimistic. I'm just looking at the patterns and stating things exactly as they are.